Let's begin with the Occupy Wall Street protests themselves. Senator Sherrod Brown is a Democrat from Ohio. Senator, if you were standing in Wall Street with the Occupy Wall Street people, what placard would you be holding up in the air?
Well, that's a good question. I just think that for the president to be on our side in the end. And I mean, this isn't a liberal, conservative, left or right. It's whose side are you on? And the president's starting to fight more than he did. That's a good sign. I think the energy coming out of the Wall Street protesters is always a good thing. When people nonviolently speak out and stand for something, it's good to challenge authority when they do that.
Do you think they want reform or they want structural change, the kind of stuff I grew up with and you grew up with, which is a real argument about what kind of a system of economy we have in this country? Is this for structural change, radical change, like the way profits go to different corporations or the way people get jobs? Is it systemic or do they just want things fixed a little? I'm curious. What do you think?
Well, I don't think they want minor reforms. I think that, you remember during the banking bill, one of the Brown-Kaufman amendment would have basically said those banks that have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, the biggest 6 banks in the country, should have been broken up into smaller banks. It would have, instead of the power again accruing at the top. We saw what happened this week when some of the largest banks in the country added additional charges quietly, sort of underhandedly, to some of the veterans that were refinancing their homes. And those kinds of things are still going on. So minor changes at the edge are not what people want. And I think that, having Rich Cordray in as the Consumer Protection Bureau chief, things like that are really going to make the big banks and make others behave the way they're supposed to.
Well, do you think corporations are like Mitt Romney says they are? They're just people like us. Do you think they operate in the national interest or the interest of working people? When corporate boards meet and make decisions about automating and getting rid of employees or make decisions about investing overseas and not here, do you think they make decisions in the interest of patriotism or just cash? What do you think?
Well, I think they're operating. I remember the CEO of one major company, it may have been GE, it might have been Dow, I can't remember, a few years ago, said I could wish I could move my corporate headquarters to a barge off the coast so I wouldn't have to be beholden to any country. And I understand that. If that's the way they are, then we treat them that way. And that is that we treat them fairly but firmly on taxes and other things. And when we give tax breaks for companies that move overseas, there's something wrong with that. Earlier today, I was at Miracle Scottsgrow, a company in sort of central Ohio. And one guy said, this guy is management. He said, what are we going to do to help the middle class here? We're seeing middle class wages decline. We're seeing manufacturing move jobs offshore. Yeah. And I think that's what these protests on Wall Street are all about. They're standing up not just for the middle class, but for working people who aspire to be middle class. And that is getting a fair shake from companies and getting a fair shake from their government. They don't feel like they are, clearly.
Yeah, I think they're there to stay. I think this is going to be maybe not as big as Egypt, but I think this is going to be permanent in our politics all through the next election. These people have got their act together more than I think the Democratic Party does these days. Anyway, let's look at this Values Voters Summit today. Republican Majority Leader Eric Cantor denounced the Occupy Wall Street movement. Let's listen to his angle.
I, for one, am increasingly concerned about the growing mobs occupying Wall Street and the other cities across the country. And believe it or not, some in this town have actually condoned the pitting of Americans against Americans.
Such babbitry. Why do you think he instinctively, no, really, it is like the old stuff, Sinclair Lewis. Here's a guy speaking to the people of Main Street about the evils of the little people outside their windows. Why do you think the Republican Party instinctively dumps on people who are out of work, people who are simply in an American way raising their voices?
Well, it's the same people on the Republican, on the far right, that anytime we talk about a tax increase for somebody making $1 million a year, anytime we talk about challenging the banks or challenging big insurance companies, or people protest peacefully in Wall Street, they say class warfare. Well, as you know, and as you've talked on this show, Chris, many times, the class warfare has been aimed by interests, the biggest, wealthiest interest groups in the country, aimed at the middle class. And unfortunately, the middle class far too often loses. losing on this class warfare coming from the most well-heeled interest groups in Washington. And that's why they're fighting back. That's why we're fighting back. That's why you fight back on this show, to just give everybody an equal chance. And when Eric Cantor does that, he shows his true stripes.
Anyway, thank you so much. I'm with you, by the way. I think you're a great senator. Thank you, Sherrod Brown of Ohio.
Thanks,
Michael
Chris.
Mulgrew is president of the United Federation of Teachers, and he joins us right now from the protest site in downtown. Mr. Mulgrew, I like you where you are, and I like the fact you're on the show tonight. Let's talk about the left, the positive left, who want to make this a better country. I'm not talking anarchy. I'm talking people that really want good reform, structural change in the right kind of way, more equality in this country. What can get done if labor can get in bed with these people in the streets there?
Well, the people here at Occupy Wall Street, first and foremost, they're very clear that this is not a political movement. This is a social movement. And we're, myself and some of my colleagues, we're here to say, just do what you're doing and keep it moving, because this is a discussion that we believe this country needs to have. And you walk through this park, you hear all of their different ideas. But the main message that they keep saying is, whatever's been going on here in this country, 1% keep getting richer and 99% are getting poorer and poorer. And we're hoping that by supporting these people and just let them keep going out and saying the message that they're doing, go across this country, that's the debate we need to be having on every street corner across this country if we want our country once again to work for everyone.
As you walk among those people, and you can probably talk well to them as a labor organizer, did you hear an idea or two that struck you that you liked? What kind of, seriously, I want to know what you've learned out there, because I'm talking about the end of the show tonight. I think we can learn from people out in the streets. Did you hear any ideas you liked from the people the Occupy Wall Street people there?
Well, they really have it's a highly structured organization inside of this park right here. People try to have put them out there as like this complete chaotic group. They have a structure for, how do we make our decisions based on what policies we want to do, just even how they work here. There's a medical center, there's a cafeteria, there's a library center. And what we're seeing here is all of their decisions are made about what's best for the majority of the people. How do we make sure we allow the individual voice to be heard, but at the same time, how do we make sure that whatever we're deciding helps most of the people? And that is something that has obviously gone awry here in this country. I'm standing right now in downtown New York City. New York City is the income disparity capital of the entire United States. So this is a clear example of what's going wrong. The financial industry's here, but more than half the households in this city are now below the poverty line. And that's what I'm learning from them. It's like we all just have to respect each other, but at the same time, stop with the politics. We want our society to move forward. And I think that's a very powerful message they're delivering.
Give me one thing that Congress could do that would reduce the disparity, the difference between rich and poor in America.
Well, right off the top, it has to be, the tax structure is completely out of whack. I represent teachers and school secretaries. They're paying a higher percentage of tax than someone who's making $17 billion running a hedge fund. That's absurd. We haven't had the concentration of wealth this high, this just such a small percentage having all the wealth since 1929. And what you're hearing here and what so many people have been saying is we don't want a complete collapse. We do not want another Great Recession. So just start with the tax structure. Let's be fair about it.
Wait a minute. Okay. It's Friday. Let's get serious here. The Democrats have controlled the Congress a lot in the last 20, 30 years. They've been chairman. We got still a Democratic chairman of the Finance Committee in the Senate. They've controlled Ways and Means with a lot of well-known people like Charlie Rangel. They never got rid of carried interest. They never got rid of those disgusting advantages that the hedge fund operators get. Why should you trust the Democrats when they've had the power to get rid of these crappy tax deals that give money to people who already make billions? Why do you trust them to fix it?
That's why it was very clear to say to you, this is not a political movement. This is a social movement. It doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. What we are hearing now is the government has not been working for the people. We've had Democrats in control and Republicans in control. And for 30 years, we've seen all this wealth shift, and it has to stop. That's what I've learned from walking in this park and talking to these people. It's got to be about stop with these party politics. But more importantly, let's do what's right for most people. Let's have a real chance at the middle class again. I'm a teacher. I educate children. But I also want to make sure that as that child gets educated and goes to college, they have access to a good life. It's pretty clear Talk to anyone here, talk to anyone on Main Street, anywhere else.
Yeah.
Those opportunities are disappearing.
You know, in Cairo, you and I watched it like everybody else what happened over there. They brought down the Mubarak. They brought down the statues. They changed everything in Egypt. I hope that doesn't happen here because I don't like violence, and I do love our Constitution. But what do you think? Good can come out of this in the end? In a couple of weeks or a couple of months, what's going to be different in America because of that crowd behind you?
What we're all hoping is that discussion about really making those changes, about stop the income disparity is one of the major things you hear over and over in here. And they all feel, for their own little reasons, they might have about campaign finance, it might be about free media where it's not independent anymore. They're all saying that you need to stop the income disparity that's just out of control in this country because you have to have that strong middle class. And if we start hearing politicians on both sides start talking about that instead of trying to play these divide games, then these people have accomplished something that we haven't been able to do in 30 years.
You're great, Mr. Mulgrew. It's great having you on. Please come back to Hardball. You belong here, too.